states, the reason they brought federation in was because the states were misbehaving in the 19th century. They were creating their own little separate countries. Right? So they said, no more. We're going to stop this. We're going to bring in one set of laws that are binding on all the states. So we read section 109 and we read, when a law of a state is inconsistent with a law of the Commonwealth, the latter shall prevail, and the former shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be invalid. Right? So that's an instruction to us to keep an eye out on the state laws to see whether they do marry up to the Commonwealth laws. If they don't, then they must be treated as invalid. So that's why it's a good idea to first and foremost, as your foundation, when understanding your rights, what you can, what you cannot do, what the states can and what they cannot do, is understand what the Commonwealth law says first, so that you can use then that as a checklist against what the state are trying to impose. Now, Ivan earlier mentioned the original constitution hanging in the old Parliament House. So we'll go to section 58. So 58 talks about royal assent to bills. So Parliament has the ability to generate a bill. All it has the ability to do, a bill, it's a presentation, it's a presumption.
Proposed law.
Proposed law. It's not law, it's proposed. This is reflecting back on the sovereignty of Parliament. Sovereign parliaments could just bring a law out and that's it. But no, not here in Australia. It's a different set of it's a different set of rules here. So it must be assented to, and this is the role of the executive. The Parliament, the lower house, drafts the rough stages of the bill, hands it up to the Senate. The Senate then either accept it or reject it. Eventually, once they've gone through it, they then hand it up to the executive. The executive's made up of your Governor-General, your Queen, and your governors of the state. Then they look at it, and then on behalf of the Queen, they then give the royal assent if everything is okay, if everything marries up to what the Constitution says. Right? And that's their job, that's the executive's job. So the Parliament cannot influence the executive. Okay, that's important. Now, from what Ivan said, the original Constitution, because it was debated over a number of years, the original Constitution was assented to, according to this document, by the then monarch, Queen Victoria. Now, many years ago, there was a tour going through Old Parliament House, and someone looked very closely at that original document, and they found that Queen Victoria's signature was not on it. Okay. So the original Constitution was never properly assented to. That's right. Queen Victoria, our Prince Albert died in 1864. Now, Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were as one. Right? They worked very closely together and they maintained the laws of England very well. Okay, they were sticklers for proper process, and one could not work without the other as such. Unfortunately, when Prince Alfred died, Queen Victoria went into grief, and she never recovered. In fact, by the end of the 19th century, they deemed her, today we would deem her as incapable of being in the position that she was. So, because of her mental condition, Parliamentary Secretary signed off the Australian Constitution. Okay.
Does it mean that the Australian Constitution itself that we have to base on is not valid?
No, because the unique document as it was brought in the referendum. Now, the referendum
that we had
to bring that document in
1899.
to be presented to Westminster Parliament approved that document as it stood. It was knocked back the first time, but the people then they went back a second time and they basically brought the Catholics in, and the Catholics gave it the nod, and that was enough to get it over the line. Okay. So there were only 25% of the population that actually voted on that first referendum. Okay, but it got over the line. Now, like I said before, it's important to understand where the sovereignty really lies in this country. And that is because of Section 128, which is the referendum. Nowhere else in the Commonwealth do they have that ability. So the people gave it the seal of approval. And that's important. It doesn't matter because the Queen is only the head of the public service. Okay. So it's just a formality that can be easily explained, but it's nothing. There are people out there, particular groups, who are saying that the Constitution is invalid because she didn't personally sign off. I say, and I can back it up, that I can strike that out quite comfortably through the referendum question. Now, since the first referendum was then held after the Constitution was approved in 1906, and there's been 46 referendums since 1906, the last one being in 1999. Okay, so the people of Australia, in the majority, have stepped in and used their sovereign power to vote yes or no to a question or series of questions that the government, through the Governor-General, has put to us. So that's important. That's where the real power lies. So no one could argue comfortably that the document is invalid, because it's not. Okay, it's clearly not. And the last question put to us in '99 was whether we want a republic or we want to remain with this Constitution, and we all said we'll stick where it's safe, thanks. Okay. So there's no reason to worry about that.
What was the result of that? The percentages?
I have got the results in my bag there if you want to see them, but
it wasn't that close.
it wasn't that close. But there have been some really crucial referendums, and it's just through my research and Kelvin's and people who are involved in this group that we've gone through that document, those referendums in detail, and we have found what the system are heavily relying upon now was put to the people. And the problems that we're suffering now, and particularly since 1986, was brought out in what was called the Australia Act. All the states have been basing their legislation on that Australia Act. It was put to the people in 1984, and the people said no. It was not carried, failed. It was close, it was very close. It was too close for comfort, but it was not carried. And yet they are now relying upon that document they created in absolute abuse of what the people of Australia said.
Is that because they say the Queen signed on the outside?
The Queen was misled. Okay, they took this act over to England thinking that, it's failed the referendum, we're going to do it anyway, we'll take it over to England and get Westminster to sign it off. Under the letter of the law, it doesn't matter what they do. The sovereign people of this country knocked it back. That's it. We don't need to go any further. They have to get our approval. Now, this is also reflected in many times in the past 100 years, particular governments, especially New South Wales for some reason, have made applications to the law reform commissions in each of the states to repeal the laws of England, which we inherited through what was called the Australian Courts Act 1828, which was the laws that governed this country after Cook landed here. Now, these challenges to those laws were met with resistance, but the Australian Courts Act and the law reform commissions of each of those states said again and again and again to these government bodies, you cannot ever repeal the law of England. There's a process. You must first go to a referendum. If you get a pass on that referendum, then that's not the repeal of the law. Because we're bound by the laws of England, then it's the job of the Governor-General to take the result of that referendum over to England, and then both houses of Westminster Parliament give it the final nod.
So the referendum comes before the repeal?
Yes, when it comes to repealing the law of England, that's the process that must take place here. Okay, now they have been doing this in they tried to do it right up until 1976, and then they went, oh listen, we're never going to get anywhere this way. We'll just repeal it anyway, because the average punter wouldn't know any of this stuff if they fell over it. So what are they going to do? What the heck? We'll get away with it, and this is what they've been doing. Now, here in Victoria, Bracks repealed an English law which forbid witchcraft. Okay.
That's silly.
Now they can't do that. But you've got to look carefully at why they want these particular laws repealed. And of course, there's not enough inquiry on through our press to find out why these laws are repealed. But they have been repealing. And funnily enough, they've been holding black masses at the county courthouse in Melbourne between 1 in the morning and 3 in the morning.
Really? I thought they said they were Bohemian Grove.
No, they do it here in
Really?
Australia.
Wow, you boy.
They've got a big serpent in the courthouse at the county court.
Pardon?
They've got a big serpent sculpture in the county court.
Yeah. Wow.
And it talks about, it crushes the victim and restricts the victim's breathing.
Yep.
And that's what goes on in there. The spirit attached to that. That's
Yeah, there was a.
Wow.
I've been getting affidavits. I've been getting affidavits from people up in Queensland who are exposing satanic rituals conducted by federal court judges, family court judges. There's also been a lot of high-ranking police officers. It's just bizarre. I've had 2 cases just in the last couple of months where people have shown me the evidence, and one lady was under witness protection because of what she saw, and this was through a church called Hillsong. Okay, Hillsong Church. The guys, the people that actually run that church are heavily involved in this stuff, and Hillsong Church also attract a lot of our politicians, and the politicians that are attracted there are heavily involved in these rituals. I've seen the affidavits, so you know it's it's not like this is hearsay or anything. Yeah, this is fact.
Well, when I was can I just have your input on that? And yes, I looked into all that, so I had no doubt that it's going on. Just a little surprised that it's really happening in the courtroom. But when I've been to the new Parliament House, and I was on the Canberra rally, the big trustee rally, and walking up to the bus, because they segregated us all, there's this massive big sign, beautiful sign, and I got up closer, and it was the Masonic pyramid with the all-seeing eye up top. It's the design of New Parliament House. I had photos, I couldn't believe it, but it was a Masonic lodge.
Most of the judges are in it.
Yeah, most of the Supreme Court judges
Yeah.
Freemasons.
So yeah, just a bit more confirmation and stuff. And
One of our problems with government is their Section 44I, if you want to go to Section 44, Phil, of the Constitution. Okay, disqualification from sitting in Parliament.